What the hell is happening at 170? Now, before the video begins, apparently Dana White knows my upload schedule because he announced Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington literally last night, and he knows I upload on Fridays, and that was Wednesday night. And obviously this video was made under the assumption that Colby Covington versus Leon Edwards would have not been announced for a long time. And though this video is still going to explain why the guys at 170 weren't fighting each other, towards the end of this video, it's mostly going to be seeing whether or not I was right or wrong with my predictions for 170 before this announcement. But anyways, fair play to Dana. The welterweight division seems to be frozen in time. I saw a tweet from Shavkat Rakhmonov last week saying he was still available for UFC 294 or 295, which is ridiculous because Shavkat's last performance was amazing with him going to war with Jeff Neal and ending the fight with a standing rear naked choke. But that was March of this year. Shavkat, an exciting and undefeated prospect of the welterweight division, hasn't fought in over 6 months. And when I was getting into the reason why Shavkat isn't fighting, maybe the people at the welterweight division are truly ducking Shavkat, I looked into the division further and realized that nobody is fighting, period. Now, looking into the welterweight rankings, when's the last time anyone in the top 10 of the division ever fought? The last time Leon fought was back in March 18th of this year against the current #1 contender Kamaru Usman, which makes the welterweight division have one of the longest droughts of championship fights, only getting beaten out by the heavyweight division and the lightweight division, and also the light heavyweight division, but they have their own problems and we won't really talk about that in this video. But going back to the lightweight and the heavyweight division, both those divisions since their last championship fights have had incredible fights amongst the top 5 contenders, and both divisions are officially scheduled for championship fights in the end of this year, which can't be said for the welterweight division. Then after Leon and Kamaru, we get into Colby, who practically embodies what has happened to the welterweight division. Colby Covington hasn't fought since March of last year. To put this into wild perspective, Bo Nickel hadn't even made his MMA debut yet at the time that Colby last fought, and has gone on to fight 4 more times before a fight has officially been announced for Colby. Despite Colby calling out the champ and practically everyone in the division at this point, he has yet to set up anything of actual substance. Obviously, there are rumors of Dana having Colby fight Leon next, but that was back in March and April, and we have yet to hear anything official. Until now, obviously. The next guy on the rankings is Belal Muhammad, who people just love to hate. Belal hasn't fought since he beat current #5 contender Gilbert Burns back in May of this year, and given that no one is really hyped to see him fight, let alone fight for a title, despite him probably being the most deserving of a title shot, Belal is probably not going to be set up for anything big anytime soon, and practically there's no word of him fighting anytime soon. Then technically we still have Khamzat Chimaev ranked #4 officially on the welterweight rankings on the UFC site. Khamzat is also still listed as an underdog with his fight against Paulo, which I don't know what's happening on the UFC site, but anyways, we all know Khamzat is not coming back to the welterweight division in the near future and has his sights set on 185. Also, I don't even think he can physically make 170 anymore. I mean, look at the size of him. So with Khamzat out and the potential of a Colby versus Khamzat press conference, or that potential Kamaru fight being out as well, Khamzat's departure from 170 doesn't do the welterweight division any better. Skipping over Gilbert Burns, who previously mentioned had that fight against Belal, we go into the boogeyman of the division, Shavkat Rakhmonov. His striking is devastating and he has the grappling prowess to finish the fight from anywhere, be it on the ground or standing up. Shavkat is a nightmare for anyone in the top 5 of the division, and look at these potential matchups. Him versus Gilbert Burns would simply be a banger, with both guys being able to handle themselves on the feet and also go toe-to-toe with the grappling as well. Shavkat versus Belal would also be great too. Hear me out, I think Shavkat's violent style would outweigh Belal's boring approach and almost force out an exciting fight from Belal. Then a fight against Kamaru would be a classic old guard versus new guard fight. Will the former champ prove he still has it, or will the young, undefeated prospect prove he's next up? That should be a great fight to watch, but Kamaru has stated in the past that he would not fight Shavkat unless it was for the title, which brings up a bigger problem amongst the contenders, but I'll get into that a little later in this video. And then these matchups are all under the assumption that Leon and Colby is set up, but obviously Shavkat versus either of them would be great too. Then I wanted to briefly mention the unfortunate Stephen Thompson situation. Stephen Thompson was supposed to fight Michel Pereira at UFC 291, but when Pereira missed weight by 3 pounds, Stephen Thompson understandably refused to fight him. Though despite making weight that night like a professional and having put in the work in camp, he still didn't receive his show money from Dana. which really sucks. Anyways, breezing past the last 3 of the top 10, Jeff Neal hasn't fought since he was finished by Shavkat in March. Sean Brady hasn't fought since October of last year when he was finished by Bilal. And Vicente Luque might be the only guy out of the top 10 that has fought relatively recently when he fought Rafael dos Anjos back in August. So now we get into the big question. Why is the welterweight division frozen? I think the simple answer is the Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington fight remains the main bottleneck for the welterweight division. So long as that fight remains stuck, the entire division remains stuck as well. Dana wants this fight to be made bad. I mean, to Dana's credit, it is the perfect matchup. Colby Covington is a huge shit talker and personality in general, and this clip of Colby throwing it back to revolutionary times is unbelievably funny.
And I will bring that belt back to America where it belongs. It'll be just like the war in 1776 when we defeated the English.
And obviously, stylistically, this should be a great matchup too. In one corner, you have a high-level striker that is an absolute sniper going up against a chain wrestler with high-volume striking and can keep up the pace all 5 rounds. So obviously, this should be a really fun fight. And originally, this fight was scheduled to be in July of this year, and it was supposed to headline UFC 291 in London. Though obviously, we've seen that UFC 291 fell through for Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington, though we did get a pretty sick card. This super fight would get pushed out of happening in the summer and practically get pushed out of happening anytime soon within this year. With the massive delay this fight has had and with no real updates on any official date, hype for this fight that was once at an all-time high back in March and April is slowly dwindling. But the big question is, what's the holdup? Honestly, I don't really fucking know. It seems like Colby and Dana want this fight, but Leon and some fans don't believe Colby even has the merit to get a title shot, considering he hasn't beat anyone in the top 5 of the division and is 2-2 in his last 4. Though there's rumors from Leon's manager that Leon versus Colby might happen before the end of the year at possibly UFC 295, but considering that's being headlined by John Jones, I don't think that Dana wants to make a big fight like this be the co-main to that fight. And then you have UFC 296 in December, which seems like the more likely option until you realize that there are still rumors of Conor McGregor fighting Michael Chandler in December, which would definitely headline UFC 296 if that were to happen. So what about the rest of the division? A great point that was brought up by you guys is that Shavkat, Burns, and Kamaru are all quote-unquote teammates or friends. There's some controversy to whether they're actually really close teammates, and maybe this is being used as an excuse to avoid fighting one another, but whatever the case might be, they won't fight unless it's for the belt. Like I said before, Kamaru refuses to fight Shavkat unless it's for that title. So immediately, you practically have 3 of the top 5 guys refusing to fight because the belt remains hostage. So how can we solve this? Well, my first thought was Shavkat versus Burns and Bilal versus Kamaru. That, I think, would have perfectly made sense, while Colby and Leon would be set, since that fight would have covered everybody in the top 5 and we wouldn't be repeating fights. But because everyone apparently wants to be best friends, I think the most realistic fight to make is Bilal versus Shavkat. This would definitely set up the next contender and would be a banger, despite Bilal being half of that fight. Again, Shavkat would bring that heat and force Bilal to fight violently. And as for Burns and Kamaru, I'm honestly not too sure. Burns has had his chance fighting for the belt and then fighting again to be the next contender, but failed in those tries. Kamaru has had his reign, and considering won't fight most guys in the top 5 because they're all friends, he's going to be stuck too. And I've seen some names like Ian Gary and JDM being thrown around. They are much more active fighters in comparison to the entire welterweight division, but I still think the top 5 need to fight. At least the top 10 need to fight first before they get into the mix. So in conclusion, so long as the Colby Covington and Leon Edwards fight is stuck, the rest of the division is bottlenecked. Another thing that I realized at the end of this video is that the Kamaru Usman era was pretty sick. He was really active, he was putting on pretty good performances, and that was when the welterweight division was fighting each other. Anyways, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this division can get better. Let me know your thoughts on this whole ordeal in the division, and thank you guys again for supporting. Peace.